Has Rainbow Six Siege gotten unrealistic? Is it? I'm asking you this question right now. Drop it in the comments. I personally don't believe it has. Of course, you can say that there has been a tonal shift since the launch of the game. That is a bit undisputable. There has been a change in tone, but when it comes to the core design of when they are making a gadget, it is the same philosophy as it has always been since the beginning of the game. And you can explain this with a very simple Venn diagram. On the left, you have the realism. These are the realistic technologies, components, chemicals, or variations of these gadgets in real life in which they are stemming the inspiration and background from. And then on the right side, we have the creative freedom, the little thing which is going to take that realistic gadget and give it that little imagination boost. I feel like a good example for this is one of the core operators, and that is Thatcher. On the left, we have the realism side, and that is the real electromagnetic pulses, the EMPs. The fact that it does affect electronics, and the fact that there is ways to create devices that can do this. But then on the right side, for the creative push, the creative freedom side, we have the idea of it being condensed to a pocket-sized grenade, which then gives us the middle result of this mixture of the pocket EMP grenade in which Thatcher and the secondary ones uses. For pretty much every gadget in Rainbow Six Siege since launch, you can use this diagram to help explain it. Let's take the most recent defender, for example, Scopos. She has two humanoid robots in which she controls from her control center on the field. For our realism side, we have these new advanced mechanical robots which companies such as Boston Dynamics are creating. They move like humans, they can pick themselves up, and are continuing to evolve as time goes on. We also have the continuous usage of robots in a military aspect as well. So with that in our realism side, if we move to the creative side, we have just the more fluid robot movement, the more control over them, and them acting more human-like, which is a path we are already going down already. So, is it far-fetched to assume that this NATO-based counter-terrorism organization has an advanced version of these robots already? I don't think so. I think Scopos' shells are very realistic. Let's talk about some of the more complicated ones which people talk about as well, and I'm going to start off with Azami. Now, at face value, what Azami does is she throws a knife from her pocket, and then a magic barrier appears which is bulletproof. And I actually want to show you the words from Ubisoft themselves when they were revealing Azami about how this works, because there's actually a chemical reaction which is happening to create this barrier.
So we went to internet and we were looking for the chemical reactions that we can find, and we found one that transformed a gas into something solid, and we decided to take that road. And that's why on the kunai we added these two canisters. So one is for the gas and the other is it's the compound that solidifies the gas. And finally the last part is the arm mechanism. Azami is a bodyguard, she's a very high fashion operator. So we thought that it was cool to hide something on her arm to add this mechanic to our dressing.
So as you see from their research, they found two chemicals which when mixed together causes a gas to turn into a solid state in a fast pace. Using this realistic idea, they took a mixture of this gas and then the compound which would cause it to be solidified and put them together in the kunai knife. That means when the kunai knife is deployed, this gas then gets dispersed and then the other compound instantly solidifies it, creating this barrier. So if we go back to our diagram, on the left we would have these two compounds which are used to do this chemical reaction, and we would also have the concept of a kunai knife as well being something throwable. And then in our creative side, we would have the idea of mixing them together inside of a throwable knife, and the barrier probably sustaining a lot more bullets than it maybe realistically will. But like with any other operator, we have the realistic side, the creative side, and then it gives us our final gadget. We can even do this with Ayana's one as well, using the concept of augmented reality as well as drones which display images, because that's what Ayana's gadget is. It's a bunch of drones which is then deploying an image of herself which she is controlling using her lens. We then use the creative freedom to mix them together for a more realistic display of it projecting her itself and her control over it. And then we have Ayana. Although I will admit this one is a bit further forward, at the end of the day, they are still taking realistic aspects from real life mixed with that creative freedom to make her gadget. This is still the same philosophy as it once was. So even with that said, people will probably still say, well, although they maybe can still be considered realistic to an extent as anything else can be, At the end of the day, we started off with a man with a sledgehammer, and now we have 2 robots, for example. But my genuine reply to that statement is, okay, what do you expect? This game is in year 10, or going into year 10. Just because Sledge had a basic gadget when the game came out, doesn't mean the operator 10 years later have to be. There's this small bit of contradiction from the community when they always want these new flashy operators with interesting gadgets which bring something new to the game, and then complain when the game is no longer realistic. You have to allow them to have this creative freedom to create new gadgets, to create new operators, to push the boundaries. And as long as it keeps that core philosophy of keeping the realism mixed with creative freedom and a bit of imagination, then I truly don't see an issue there. Do you want every operator to be the exact same? Do you not want them to take risks and do some interesting new stuff? I just personally think that's a bit of a weird argument to make because, okay, yeah, the launch operators did have these different style of gadgets, but that's the whole point in a game evolving. That's the whole point in pushing the boundaries. That's the whole point in adding new content to begin with. If we're going to be stale and keep doing the same thing which we done 10 years ago, no one's going to be interested and we're not going to have any impactful new operators. So I think operators like Scopos with robots do fit in Rainbow Six Siege. What's important is that they do make them as realistic as possible, which they have done. If they genuinely do add an operator who is beyond unrealistic and has an absolutely crazy ability which they just cannot justify with a realistic response, then I will be the first one to say, hey, listen, this is too far and it doesn't have a place in this game. But as of year 9 season 4, I genuinely don't think there's a single operator which fits that category. I think they have done a very good job of both being creative from a gameplay standpoint with new gadgets and having the world building to justify it as well. Because not only have they always ran with the philosophy of it being realistic with a push of imagination, they also build the world up to be like this as well. They have lore explanation. The gadgets are made in universe by some of the operators, for example. Mira is the head of R&D at Rainbow. Osa is the head of the QCR department at Nighthaven. They are responsible for a lot of the tech in the game. If you do watch my lore videos, you do understand that there is effort into building this world, into explaining how these gadgets work, how they were made. Every gadget in this game has an explanation of how it was made. Even the basic ones like Sledge's hammer. It was built by Thatcher's uncle for Sledge, so there is a personal meaning behind the hammer. So I do think, just to outright say that Rainbow Six Siege has gotten unrealistic and the new ones are designed in a different way to the older ones, is quite disingenuous to the creation of these gadgets as well, and the efforts which are truly put into making them, because there is a lot behind that. I honestly think that is one of the most underappreciated parts of Rainbow Six Siege and its lore especially. Deimos' gadget design is quite funny because they didn't even need to use a lot of creative liberty for it. That is outright a gadget which the US Army is using. So when you truly look into the design of gadgets, it really gives you a new appreciation of when you use them and how you play this game, in my opinion, and it is really fun just to look through how they're all made. Let me know if you want me to make more videos talking about how each gadget is made. Maybe it would work well as a series of shorts, which I'll post here and on TikTok. It's quite fun as well, especially knowing this, playing the game and looking at the small details. Like when you play Azami, you'll see the gas deploy and then you'll see it solidify and you're like, oh, I understand this now. Tuberal's Zoto canisters work in quite a similar way to Azami's, where it's taking 2 chemical compounds and mixing them together and then deploying it. If you actually cook his gadget, you can see what happens with the top bit of it and the bottom of it mixing in a center chamber, and then you see the effect happen. Now, to address the point I also made at the beginning of the video as well, where I said that yes, there has been a tonal shift, I want to expand on that a little bit more because I feel like a lot of people get that and realism debate mixed up quite a lot. So to take the core operators, for example, and to compare them to some of the gadgets like the Nighthaven operators have, for example, then yes, you can say that there has been a shift in tone from that era of Siege to the current era. A lot of the gadgets which were introduced at the launch of the game were more of the core ones you'd expect a counter-terrorism unit to use, and more of a traditional sense of what these operators would be using in these situations. But like I was saying, you can't just stay in the same place forever and not change. You can't have one of the most successful online PvP games being Rainbow Six Siege, despite what people may tell you. This game is still massive, but everyone chooses to overlook that. You can't just expect them to stagnate on the exact same thing for a decade. That tonal shift was bound to happen. You were bound to go from a sledgehammer to a robot. You were bound to go from an exothermic charge to an ace aqua breacher, which uses water to actually breach reach the wall. If we start to hold back, if we start to limit creative freedom, if we stop trying new things, then that goes against the entire core values of Rainbow Six Siege itself. This was always a game which is meant to allow you to have freedom. It allows you to push new frontiers, and it allows you to try new things constantly. If we were to go against that by limiting the freedom of gadgets, not trying new things, maybe not even changing the tone a little bit, then I don't think Rainbow Six Siege would be a game to continue worth playing if we are going to creatively limit the game. So I think the next time you see a new gadget, and the next time you maybe see something which you might initially think is maybe a bit too advanced, take a second, listen to the explanation they give about this gadget, and you'll start to understand and appreciate it a bit more, and it definitely gives you a new outlook on the creative process of this game and the new gadgets that we do get. So I, for one, am excited for what future gadgets do come to the game. I'm really interested to see especially how they work, and like I was saying earlier in the video, if you want me to talk more about how gadgets work and what mechanically works with them, I would happily do that because I think it's really fun. So be sure to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about this video. Drop a like if you did enjoy, subscribe if you're new. Really interested to hear your thoughts on it, so be sure to comment because I think this is a really fun video to make and it's definitely a hot topic discussion. Have a great rest of your day. I love you all. Stay safe. Peace.